Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the fourth of the fourth month on our Creator's calendar as we comprehend it, which happens to line up with the 14th of June, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. And we are continuing with our chronological reading to the best of our ability of the books of Scripture. We had just finished, or we're about to finish rather, the book of Exodus or Shemot, where Yahuwah has brought his people, the third and fourth generations of the 12 tribes, out of Mitzrayim, and he's now brought them into the wilderness. He gave them his commands and covenant, his word like the seed coming down and being planted, and immediately Satan contrived ways to have them violate that very covenant that they said. And the two stones that were held by Moshe were broken. He went through the golden calf incident, and then he had to go back up the mountain to receive the added bonds due to transgression, which is what we're going to finish up right here. He's actually coming down now, and he's giving them the or I'm sorry, he'd come down, he'd given them the new or added instructions. They had gone over what it was going to be to anoint the sons of Aharon and what they would do with the festivals and with the sacrifices and how to consecrate them, I believe is in what we're going to cover. But there was a change because of our response to the truth given. And while it was foreknown, it wasn't played out until its course in time. The same thing has happened throughout history. He's given us his word to live by, and our response to it has had a direct correlation on how the truth is played out in history. But right here, we're on chapter 40, and it says, And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, On the first day of the first month at the Chodesh, you shall set up the tabernacle of witness, and you shall place the ark of the testimony, and shall cover the ark with the veil. And you shall bring in the table, and shall set forth that which is to be set forth on it. And you shall bring in the candlestick, and place its lamps on it. And you shall place the golden altar to burn incense before the ark, and you shall put a covering of a veil on the door of the tabernacle of witness. And you shall put the altar of burnt offerings by the doors of the tabernacle of witness, and you shall set up the tabernacle round about, and you shall set apart all that belongs to it round about. And you shall set the laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and shall put water therein. And you shall set up the court round about, and hang up the hanging at the court gate. And you shall take the anointing oil, and shall anoint the tabernacle, and all things in it, and shall set it apart, and all its furniture, and it shall be set apart. And remember, he set it apart, or if you don't remember, we'll see it again. He set all this stuff apart by sprinkling blood on it to consecrate it. And it mentions by Shaul that without the shedding of blood, nothing, right? There is no forgiveness or atonement. So he was doing a representation. All of these things, every sacrifice it mentions is a representation of the ultimate one that our Mashiach was going to fulfill in himself at the Pesach. He didn't do he didn't die, and he's not going to come back and suffer on any other appointed time. But all the representative offerings in themselves were a parable pointing to him and his works, just like everything else is about him. And it says, And you shall anoint the altar of burnt offerings and all its furniture, and you shall set apart the altar, and the altar shall be most kadosh, or most set apart. And you shall anoint the laver and his foot, and set it apart. So his stand or pedestal. And you shall bring Aharon and his sons to the doors of the tabernacle of witness, and you shall wash them with water. And you shall put on Aharon the set apart garments, and you shall anoint him, and you shall set him apart, and he shall minister to me as Kohen. And you shall bring up his sons, and shall put garments on them, and you shall anoint them as you did anoint their father, and they shall minister to me as Kohanim. And it shall be that they shall have an everlasting anointing of kahuna, or an unto ages, their anointing. And we're going to see how that was established. Again, if we haven't covered it already, we will. I can't remember if we did or not, because I've read this recently with my family too. But the whole institution of how you consecrate Aharon and his children is a parable of this appointing of kahuna unto ages, not everlasting. And it's specifically for the 7,000 years of things before the consummation's completely fulfilled in the great last day or the eighth day. It even mentions elsewhere that the sons of Zadok, of the sons of Aharon, will serve him during the millennial reign. So it's just a picture of that fact. And God willing, you can see the parable and how it was instituted in a physical way here that plays out in a spiritual way later. That's an echo of things that happen all the time in His Word, which we were just covering. This is, and Moshe did all things whatsoever Yahuwah commanded him, so did he. And and again, our Mashiach is the one who comes like unto Moshe in all things, the one drawn out of the waters, who did whatsoever Yahuwah commanded him, which he himself says that he always does what the Father pleases or wills, and he's always pleasing in his sight, and because of that, he knows that the Father is always with him. It says, and it came to pass in the first month, in the second year after their going forth out of Mitzrayim, at the Chodesh, that the tabernacle was set up. And Moshe set up the tabernacle and put on the chapiters, and put the bars into their places, and set up the posts. I want you to notice that before Aharon is anointed, he can't do anything. Moshe is the Kohen officiating all these things. After Moshe establishes the kahuna and puts it in the hands of Aharon, you won't see Moshe interceding or doing anything for the kahuna again. He tells Aharon to do so because it's been given to him. This is, and he stretched out the curtains over the tabernacle and put the veil of the tabernacle on it above as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he took the testimonies and put them into the ark, and he put the staves by the sides of the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and put on the covering of the veil, and covered the ark of the testimony as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he put the table in the tabernacle of witness, on the north side without the veil of the tabernacle. And he put on it the showbread before Yahuwah, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he put the candlestick into the tabernacle of witness, on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And he put on it its lamps before Yahuwah, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. Remember, the menorah had a thing at the top where you can direct which way the light went. And that's why I said he put on its lamps as directed, so that it would shine forward from the south, illuminating everything within. And he put, like the light of the sun, which starts from the east, goes to the south, heads to the west, and goes around hidden to the north. You can see that represented in his tabernacle if it's a dome shape and the veil is in the middle. Like our brother, believe his name is Andrew Roy, who was an engineer, discovered when he learned Hebrew and read about it. But I'll try to share a description or a link to his stuff in the description. and I've talked about it before, so I'll definitely try to do that with this one. This says, and he put on it its lamps before Yahuwah, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he put the golden altar in the tabernacle of witness before the veil. And he burnt on it incense of composition, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he set up the hanging the door of the tabernacle, or the cover, that is veil, right? And he put the altar of burnt offerings by the doors of the tabernacle. And you see, this is a little different right here. It says, and he put the altar of burnt offerings by the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the meat offering, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he made the laver, that at it Moshe and Aharon and his sons might wash their hands and their feet when they went into the tabernacle of witness, or whensoever they should advance to the altar to do service, they washed at it, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And you can find the commands for cleanliness all the way back in Yobelim, and the testaments of Louis, where Yitzhak, and even before then, Abram gave it to his sons. He got it from Noach in his writings. Yitzhak specifically gave these to Louis, who was chosen for the kahuna, where he saw it in a vision, and he describes these things to him. And then Louis in his testament talks about how before they do any of these things to wash, and whenever they offer to go and wash, and to always make sure that you don't have the blood on your person when you're going before him, as a picture of your being clean from these things that you're offering. All right, it says, and Moshe and Aharon and his sons washed their hands and their feet thereat, when they went into the tent of the congregation, and when they came near unto the altar, they washed as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And he set up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and Moshe accomplished all the works. And the cloud covered the tabernacle of witness. So after everything was done as he commanded, the esteem of Yahuwah in a cloud, which a cloud is representative of witnesses, as it mentions in the book of Hebrews, appeared, right? So the witnesses, or the cloud that covered it, appeared, which was the manifestation of his being evident in the tabernacle, which is a type of the body, which the living temple or tabernacle not built with hands is indwelling in everyone that is his children today, right? These are all types and pictures. Then it was filled after obedience and submitting to his will, right? And the tabernacle was filled with the esteem of Yahuwah. And Moshe was not able to enter into the tabernacle of testimony because the cloud overshadowed it, and the tabernacle was filled with the esteem of Yahuwah. And when the cloud went up from the tabernacle, the children of Israel departed, or prepared to depart with their baggage. And if the cloud went not up, they did not prepare to depart, till the day when the cloud went up. For a cloud was on the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, before all Israel, in all their journeyings. Which is a type, it's not so much while we're journeying physically here, but there will be another type when the cloud and the fire cover us. It mentions in 2nd Baruch, specifically during the beginnings of the consummation of the times, or what we call the millennial reign. Over his chosen, there will be cloud cover by day and fire by night. It won't be over everyone, but you would call that over those that were of the first resurrection, at the very least. right? And then we move on to the first chapter of Leviticus here, which is that parable that I was telling you about with the anointing of Aharon. Or it could just be how they do offerings. Please forgive me if I have that mistaken. But we will be getting to that. And every one of these, as we're going through it, a lot of people might think that there's little relevance to any of the stuff that's in what we call Leviticus. But I would encourage you to please bear with it patiently. A lot of the stuff in here might apply to us in parable form only, but there are things that are directly applicable to anyone who claims to be a renewed covenant believer, because we're all supposed to be like kings and Kohanim, or kings and priests, to our Elohim and Father. And all the things that they would do here physically would apply to his people in a spiritual context, where the offerings they did were of animals and things of substance like that. We do it with our prayers and praise. Although there is what you call tithing and things of that nature within the body of the assembly that we're supposed to have. But that's for a different time. So, Wayikra, or Leviticus, in Hebrew, it literally means "and he called," which is what the first words in the Hebrew actually represent. This is, "And Yahuwah called Moshe again and spoke to him out of the tabernacle of witness, saying, Speak to the children of Yisrael, and you shall say to them, If any man of you shall bring gifts to Yahuwah, you shall bring your gifts of the cattle, and of the oxen, and of the sheep. If his gift be a whole burnt offering, he shall bring an unblemished male of the herd to the door of the tabernacle of witness. He shall bring it as an acceptable before Yahuwah, right? As an acceptable offering. And it has to be perfect. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering as a thing acceptable for him, to make atonement for him. And they shall slay the calf before Yahuwah, and the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim, shall bring the blood. Now, I don't want to do this to all of them because it would take a very long time, but just when a man sins, he puts his hand on the head of the animal, which is an unblemished one of a variety of kinds, the cattle, the ram, the goat. Okay, and these all represent different things. They're all parables. And then it's given to the sons of Aharon to offer the blood. This is both a thing that was a gift and foreshadowing the responsible parties that would betray him and offer him as an offering. Just for context there. People don't always see these things. Maybe they don't want to, but there's both blessing and curse there. In the Testament of Louis and elsewhere, you see that it was an exalted thing for his children to be given the kahuna, but they were going to go and betray the King of Kings when he came, and that was straight spoken to them. It says, and he shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt. I already read that one, sorry. And they shall pour the blood around the altar, or round about the altar, which is at the door of the tabernacle of witness. And I've mentioned before, and I'll just say it one more time. Ron Wyatt found the Ark of the Covenant underground, under the Calvary, if you will, or Golgotha, where when the earthquake happened and the rocks were split and his side was pierced, the blood and water went down about 20 feet and literally was poured out round about the altar where it splattered and dripped, just like it's mentioned for them to do right here with their fingers. Literally happened. This is a foreshadow of the very events of what he did. And that's some things that we don't always see so clearly. But it was discovered January 6th, 1982. Another witness to the truth there, with our Mashiach, or our Creator, mocking those who mock him and using their own appointed times to do his will. But that again is for a different time. And for anyone that does not know anything about what I'm talking about, January 6th was originally the time of the Christ Mass on their Julian calendar that became December 25th later on. It was that Saturnalia carried over. So when they purported to do that in mockery of the truth, he disclosed the truth of his covenant on that very day as a mockery of what they've done. This is, in having flayed the whole burnt offering, they shall divide it by its limbs. And the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim, shall put fire on the altar and shall pile wood on the altar. And the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim, shall pile up the divided parts, and the head, and the fat on the wood of the altar, which is on the altar. Oh, I'm sorry, and the wood of the on the fire, which is on the altar. Sorry. And the entrails and the feet they shall wash in water, and the Kohanim shall put all on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a sacrifice, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. And if his gift of the sheep to Yahuwah, or of the lambs, or of the kids for whole burnt offerings, he shall bring it a male without blemish. And he shall lay his hand on its head, and they shall kill it by the side of the altar, toward the north before Yahuwah. And the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim, shall pour its blood on the altar round about. And they shall divide it by its limbs, and its head, and its fat. And the Kohanim shall pile them up on the wood which is on the fire, on the altar. Now the different offerings are for different offenses by different believers. The Kohen has to offer certain things, the elders have to offer certain things, the poor have to offer others, and it's all meant to point to different means and different reasons. The bull and the cattle and the rams and the goats are explained as different people and character types in the parable of what's called the animal apocalypse in the book of First Enoch or Hanok. It's not gone over in detail, but you can see a direct correlation with the animals here and what they represent there as direct correlations. It says, and they shall wash the entrails and the feet with water, like our Mashiach washed the feet of his taught ones, right? Because the feet were washed, the whole body was made clean. I can't tell you the parable of what the entrails represent here other than your inner parts, right? And the Kohen shall bring all and put them on the altar, and it is a burnt offering, a sacrifice, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. And if he bring his gift, a burnt offering to Yahuwah of birds, then shall he bring his gift of doves or pigeons. And the Kohen shall bring it to the altar, and shall wring off its head, and the Kohen shall put it on the altar, and shall wring out the blood at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take away the crop with the feathers, and shall cast it forth by the altar toward the east to the place of ashes. And he shall and he shall break it off from the wings, and shall not separate. And the Kohen shall put it on the altar on the wood, which is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, a sacrifice, a sweet smelling savor to Yahuwah. Now the crop is the same places where their food grows before they digest it, and it was taken out. That could be cleaned, that removed, just like the intestines are cleaned because of the contents in it and what that might represent. So I've never really thought about that before. That's why I'm saying I don't know every nuance of what all these parables are. He shows me a lot of things as I read, just like anyone else. But connecting the dots and growing as we learn is the whole point. So if you happen to see things in more clarity that pop up through coming or through hearing this stuff, or as you're studying on your own, don't hesitate to share. Either put it in the comments or anyone online right now, you can feel free to, put it in the chat. But that's how we all grow too. So this is Wayikra or Leviticus chapter 2. And this goes into the different kinds of gifts now. And if a soul, excuse me, and if a soul bring a gift, a sacrifice to Yahuwah, his gift shall be fine flour, and he shall pour oil upon it, and shall put frankincense on it. It is a sacrifice. And another thing that these offerings and sacrifices represent, because our Mashiach is the perfect offering that all of these were foreshadowing, we also have to keep in mind that we are his body. And as he is the head and we are the body, as he was offered, so too the martyrs were likewise made like sacrifices or pleasing offerings to Yahuwah because they were unblemished, right? But those things are alluded to in the writings of Polycarp, in the Renewed Covenant, what we call the Bible, in Ignatius's writings, where he was also a martyr. They mention, you also see that the obedience and prayers of the people are like offerings in Sirach and other places. And that's how this was to be taken. First, the physical here, and then the spiritual, where you have the martyrs through time as the different offerings that were at appointed times until the ingathering with the temporary dwelling of the millennial reign, like tabernacles. This is, and he shall bring it to the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon, and having taken from it a handful of the fine flour with the oil and all its frankincense, then the Kohen shall put the memorial of it on the altar, a sacrifice, an odor of sweet savor to Yahuwah. And the remainder of the sacrifice shall be for Aharon and his sons, a most set apart portion from the sacrifices of Yahuwah. Meaning there was a set amount. They give the measurements here in a bit, or they already have. And then just a handful was on the altar offered. Not the whole thing was wasted. And the rest was meant to feed his ministers, those who served him. And if he bring as a gift a sacrifice baked from the oven, a gift to Yahuwah of fine flour, unleavened bread kneaded with oil, and unleavened cakes anointed with oil. And if your gift a sacrifice from a pan, it is fine flour mingled with oil, unleavened, and you shall break them into fragments and pour oil upon them. It is a sacrifice to Yahuwah. And if your gift be a sacrifice from the hearth, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. And he shall offer the sacrifice which he shall make of these to Yahuwah, and shall bring it to the Kohen. And the Kohen shall approach the altar, and shall take away the sacrifice, or from the sacrifice, a memorial of it. And the Kohen shall place it on the altar, a burnt offering, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. And that which is left of the sacrifice, for Aharon and his sons, most kadosh from the burnt offerings of Yahuwah. You shall not leaven any sacrifice which you shall bring to Yahuwah, for any leaven or any honey you shall not bring of it to offer a gift to Yahuwah. Leaven, the chametz, if I have that right. Yeah, the chametz right there is fermentation, or it's literally the sourdough leavening agent, right? It's not made of yourself. It's a process that you don't put into. The same thing with honey. You collect the honey, you'd make the bread, but the actual making or creation of this is not something that you contribute to. That's what you collect, and that's a gift from him. You can offer honey, but it's a free will offering. Later on, you'll see it's not to be brought as a sacrifice that's burnt on the altar. And the same thing with no leaven. You don't burn leavened things on the altar. It's the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. But if you recall, the leavened bread was presented, the two loaves of wheat bread are leavened that are presented on the 15th of the third month. I think that's the only exception that we have. And that's a picture of the renewed covenant and the two houses being full of his doctrine joined into one, which was what was represented at that time with the outpouring of the Ruach happening. It says, you shall not, or sorry, you shall bring them in the way of fruits to Yahuwah, but they shall not be offered on the altar for a sweet smelling savor to Yahuwah. You don't burn them. And every gift of your sacrifice shall be seasoned with salt. Omit not the salt of the covenant of Yahuwah from your sacrifices. On every gift of yours you shall offer salt to Yahuwah, your Elohim. And if you would offer a sacrifice of first fruits to Yahuwah, new grains ground, roasted for Yahuwah, so shall you bring the sacrifice of the first fruits. And you shall pour oil on it, and shall put frankincense on it. It is a sacrifice. And the Kohen shall offer the memorial of it from the grains with the oil and all its frankincense. It is a burnt offering to Yahuwah. The new grains, this is the Abib. The barley, you remember, is offered in its grain. You see, Abib there. It's offered in its corn because it's not yet full when they first offer it, and then you can eat it as a grain and eventually make bread with it after first fruits on the 21st, or I'm sorry, the 26th of the first month, right? It says, and you shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense. I already read that one. And the Kohen shall offer the memorial of it from the grains with the oil and all its frankincense. It is a burnt offering to Yahuwah. All right. So again, none of this is directly relevant to us as believers today. We don't do animal sacrifices in any capacity. We're not supposed to be slaughtering lambs on Passover or doing anything of that nature. If you want to eat lamb, you can do that. If you want to eat any meat that he said is food, you can do that. But we cannot lawfully make offerings. We don't have an altar to do it. There's no Kohen to represent that. It's not something that is established at this time. There are things that are established, wave offerings of the overseers before the assemblies for certain things, but that's not like this. They're not killing an animal anymore. All right, I think we might have room, we might have time for one more before we stop for today. All right. So this is chapter 3, and it's continuing with the different types of sacrifices. And remember, these are all parables for things. We just talked about how the animal apocalypse mentions different types of animals and alluding to different types of people. Some of them are clean, some of them are unclean, right? It says, and if his gift to Yahuwah be a shalom offering, if he should bring it of the oxen, whether it be male or whether it be female, he shall bring it unblemished before Yahuwah. And he shall lay his hands on the head of the gift, and shall slay it before Yahuwah by the doors of the tabernacle of witness. And the Kohen, the sons of Aharon, shall pour the blood on the altar of burnt offerings round about. And they shall bring the shalom offering, a burnt sacrifice to Yahuwah, the fat covering the belly, and all the fat on the belly, and the two kidneys, and the fat that is upon them. He shall take away that which is on the thighs, and the caul above the liver together with the kidneys, meaning the fat above them. And all of these areas where it mentions this fat, none of this is to be eaten. All of this is offered to Yahuwah, and every bit of this is known. The fat around the belly, the fat around the kidneys and the liver is where the toxins are stored that's in your body that your organs cannot process. There's an abundance of it, stores it in fat until it can deal with it. So eating that is literally eating things that will cause you to become sick. And it says, and the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon, shall offer them on the altar, on the burnt offering, on the wood which is on the fire upon the altar. A burnt offering, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. I'm curious if this actually says wood here, because the word for wood, yeah, tree. Okay, so it says the word for etz. There's another word that is for, it's oud, like wa dalet, and or aleph wa dalet. And if you know the aleph in Anglo-Saxon Germanic that became English, whenever they had a guttural, an aleph or an ayin or things of that nature, they quite often would put a W. Na, noon, aleph, which means now, became the word now with the OW sound. And Adon became Woden. Ood became wood. And there's many other words that if you just put a W, it's straight Hebrew. It's very easy to see, and that's a phenomenon that happened to be in what spun off and became English. But that's a different word, so never mind. I wanted to look while we were here. It says, and if his gift be of the sheep, a shalom offering to Yahuwah, male or female, he shall bring it unblemished. And if he bring a lamb for his gift, he shall bring it before Yahuwah, and he shall lay his hands on the head of his offering, and slay it by the doors of the tabernacle of witness. And the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon, shall pour out the blood on the altar round about. And he shall bring the shalom offering, or of the shalom offering, a burnt offering to Yahuwah, the fat and the hinder part unblemished, he shall take away with the loins. And having taken away all the fat that covers the belly, and all the fat that is on the belly, and both the kidneys and the fat that is upon them, and that which is on the thighs, and the caul which is on the liver, with the kidneys. The Kohanim shall offer these on the altar, a sacrifice of sweet savor, a burnt offering to Yahuwah. And if his offering be of the goats, then shall he bring it before Yahuwah, and he shall lay his hands on its head, and they shall slay it before Yahuwah by the doors of the tabernacle of witness. And the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon, shall pour out the blood on the altar round about. And he shall offer of it a burnt offering to Yahuwah, the fat that covers the belly, and all the fat that is on the belly, and both the kidneys, and all the fat that is upon them, that which is upon the thighs, and the caul of the liver, with the kidneys, shall he take away. So it's interesting, the things that are offered on the fire there are not only what is unprofitable for man to consume, but also you can say it's the excess of where the the bad things that were processed out of the body went to, that are burned by fire, not the good things that are of use. And the Kohen shall offer it upon the altar, a burnt offering, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. All the fat belongs to Yahuwah. A perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your habitations, you shall eat no fat and no blood. And willing, we can learn to do that. I know I didn't really have an issue with any of these things when I didn't know it didn't know better. I'd always had kind of an aversion to eating the gristle or the real fatty chunks of stuff. It just was disgusting to me. But sometimes you do when it's cooked enough, or you do it anyways. And I've learned since then, there's some parts of meat that have it. Whenever there's fat between parts of a steak or something, that's not this fat that he's talking about. When it cooks into the ground beef or whatever, so long as you remove these things before grinding it up, that is not the fat he's talking about. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Okay? That's just part of the meat. You can't get it out completely. But our violation of these things in our lives is what causes health problems. And it's not just in the dietary instructions, it's literally in everything. One guarantee not to have disease is to be obedient in keeping the Passover. It has nothing to do with dietary anything, but obedience to an appointed time. So it's the law that makes things reality. It's not what food you eat, right? But it's his word that tells us what is food that makes that so. I'm willing you guys can see that. But if you give me just one moment. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this week, and then we'll continue with Wayikra or Leviticus chapter 4 here. We're still covering some of these sin offerings for ignorance, specifically on this one. And you get to see the nuances and differences between what types of sin, how it's reckoned to you, and other things that are also congruent with other parts of Scripture. So we're not guilty of it until it comes to your attention. For example, you can't be accused of a thing you're not aware of. It doesn't mean that you're not doing something offensive to him, but he's not vindictive. He is love. I know that's a hard concept for a lot of us to always keep in mind, but he always acts out the principles of his own nature. And he's not like the devil. The Satan is opposite to him in every conceivable way. So I'm hoping that the more we study and learn, the more we can see his benevolence, his charity, his mercy and compassion, and we can follow those examples and not be contrary to them, both in our relationship with each other and with the Almighty. So thank you all for your time. You have a wonderful rest of your Shabbat, a great Shavua Tov or week ahead, and we will see you then. Shalom.